Rewatch Podcast presents the Police Academy Film Series Rewatch. Join us each week as we go from the Academy to Miami to Moscow and revisit every film in the Police Academy franchise. Send your feedback to the Rewatch Podcast at gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or follow us on Twitter at Rewatch Pod. Today we're discussing Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, starring Steve Guttenberg, Michael Winslow, Bubba Smith, George Gaines, David Graff, Leslie Easterbrook, Marion Ramsey, Brian Tochi, Tim Kazurinsky, G.W. Bailey is back. Yay! Lance Kinsey, Bobcat Goldthwait, Sharon Stone.
I know.
David Spade.
I know again.
Brian Backer and Tab Thacker. Directed by Jim Drake. Welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast. I'm Cory, and don't you ever touch my balls without asking.
and this is Nathan, or as us vampires say, lights out, suckers. Oh.
I couldn't keep a straight face on that one.
I know. Don't ever touch my balls without asking. I know. Hilarious. How are you, man?
I'm fantastic, mate. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Yeah, I've got 2 episodes left of The Flash. I'm excited about getting to the end of that.
Awesome.
I know. But
it's hard to keep up with your regular viewing when you're watching Police Academy movies every week.
That's exactly it. And the problem is, man, there's so much quality out there. Like there's, you kind of feel like you're missing out on good stuff. You can't keep up with everything, can you?
No, definitely not.
Anyway,
we can't keep up with Police Academy, and that's what we're here with this week.
Well, we're over the halfway point, aren't we? We've hit Police Academy 4.
Yes, definitely so over the halfway.
3 more films to go. But before we get too far into our trivia and main discussion, how about we have a listen to the trailer?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Those talented graduates are back in Police Academy.
I want to welcome all of you to
Citizens on Patrol.
Citizens on Patrol.
The Police Academy has offered to train you citizens
You just don't think I'm fast enough anymore, do you?
to better protect yourselves.
Do we get to pack heat?
Attention all cars, attention all cars.
Mahoney,
Gee, I love saying that.
Jones, Hightower, Sweet Chuck, Zed, and Tackleberry.
Good idea.
From now on, by land,
You have the right to remain silent.
Who's gonna save me?
by sea, or by air, there's no escaping justice.
Gentlemen, may I see your license and registration, please? I can blast them out of the sky, sir. Not yet. I should give them a warning shot first.
Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol.
Now be careful, because a 44 Magnum has quite a kick.
See it in your neighborhood while you still have one.
All right, we're back.
Yes, let's get into some trivia here.
Yeah, how about you start?
Okay, so we have a release date of April 3rd of 87. Again, 1 year later, we've got another Police Academy movie.
I know, man. They didn't muck around, did they? Like, the first film came out in 1984, and this is the 4th. It's a film a year.
Yeah, and we were talking last week about how the director of the last 2, Jerry Paris, wanted to do 3 and 4 together, but he was actually pretty ill, and he actually did die very shortly after the 3rd film's release. So,
I mean, I do understand it from a logistical perspective, but it's not like they're making Avatar 2 and 3 here. I don't quite understand why they felt the need to shoot 2 sequels back to back. But
that's true.
I suppose from a budgetary perspective, if they've got all the cast sitting there and it only takes 2 months to shoot one film, they may as well do another one straight away.
Yeah, but they're still in the ball. Like I said, it's still 1 year after number 3. They still got the 4th one out.
Yep.
Within that year period. So Yeah, not too bad. This film debuted at number one in the US box office, and it would go on to gross $28 million, a bit over 28 million, ranking it at number 44 for the year, which, it's like I said, they've slowly been falling down. $28 million, it's hard to get any info on the budgets of these films, but yeah, I don't know. They still made another 3 after this, so I'm assuming that's still pretty good return.
You know what? I mean, the budget might be more than you think, because to kind of get people like Steve Guttenberg back and some of the George Gaines. I mean, I can't imagine they'd come back for nothing. I reckon their salaries would have been a reasonable amount. Like, didn't you mention that in Police Academy 3 wasn't Bobcat Goldthwait and Sweet Chuck's salary like $500,000 or something like that?
Yeah, just a bit over $500,000 each. So
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a lot of money. So if Bobcat Goldthwait, who was not a big star for Police Academy 3, was getting paid that, Guttenberg must be getting paid $2 million, I would expect.
Yeah, the cast alone has to cost a lot of money, so it's difficult to gauge what's going on here, And like I said, they've still made another 3 films after this, so it's hard to say what 28 million in return is a good return or not. Maybe.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, as you say, it ranked at number 44 at the year's box office in 1987, but it actually faced a lot of stiff competition. And in the previous episodes, we've been kind of going through a bit of a list about what kind of films were coming out at the time. And I mean, this is a reasonable list of films. I mean, there's some good ones and there's some not so good ones, but there's actually a couple more sequels in here, which I found interesting, or reimaginings.
Yeah, well, 86 wasn't such a good year. But the previous 2 years, it had very stiff competition. And 87, they've pumped it back up. And you're right, there is actually some sequels to some big franchises here.
Yeah, and stuff like Beverly Hills Cop 2, The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox, The Witches of Eastwick, which is a great film. That's an excellent movie.
Yeah.
Dragnet with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Outrageous Fortune, Mannequin, Roxanne, Blind Date with Bruce Willis, Spaceballs came out in that year. The Adventures in Babysitting, which I don't know anything about. Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise. What else is there, man?
Harry and the Hendersons. That's another one of those ones that I'm not sure how the cinematic release went. I know it's a bit of a cult favorite now, but, when it came out, who knows? Inner Space, I'm sure that was a huge release.
Yeah, Inner Space was a huge release.
Yeah.
And that's a good film. It's actually been 15 years since I've seen that. It'd be interesting to revisit.
Tin Men. And another sequel, Ernest Goes to Camp. And Ernest films were doing, they're in the same realm as the Police Academy. They just kept pumping those things out.
Yeah, I always think the Ernest films were always a bit of a joke in some regards, because they made quite a few of them. And I think, what was his name? Jim Varney, is that correct?
Oh, I don't remember. Honestly, I don't even remember the last time I watched an Ernest film. It was probably like 1991 when I was 7 years old or something.
It was probably the kind of thing that you passed by at the video store and didn't really pay too much attention to because it looked a bit rubbish.
But yeah, so yeah. That is some stiff competition. A few more sequels there for some of the bigger franchises. So,
and the film did okay. I wouldn't say it went gangbusters though. Like it's. Yeah. I mean, you're dead right. This is definitely the start of the decline, the slow decline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So another good bit of trivia here. Bobcat Goldthwait and Tim Kazurinsky, that's of course Zed and Sweet Chuck, they were brought on board to this film actually last minute to replace Bruce Mailer, who plays Fackler. He dropped out from the film due to negotiations falling apart over his pay, of all things. So they were just like, I don't know, I guess we can just throw another $600,000 at Bobcat Goldthwait and he'll come back.
And
you would never know. You would never pick it.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't exactly call Fackler like a really important part of the previous 2 or 3 films. I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a couple of moments here and there, but he certainly wasn't a key ingredient to the success of the Police Academy film. So
we even said for the last one, he came back for that one scene because really the focus was on his wife who was going to the academy, and they had that one scene with the role reversal, and that was it. So I don't know what he was expecting to get paid for Police Academy 4, but
so even though he dropped out, I was pretty pleased to see Bobcat and Tim Kazurinsky back.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's like I said, I thought they were a highlight. The two of them teamed together was fantastic.
Another bit of trivia is that this was David Spade's first film role. According to Steve Guttenberg's biography, The Gutenberg Bible.
Love it.
Oh my god, I didn't even know that existed. That's hilarious. Gutenberg apparently took Spade under his wing during the shooting of this movie, which took place in Toronto, Canada.
Yeah, I got some things to say about David Spade in this movie. We'll get to it.
Skateboarding legend Tony Hawk appears as one of Arnie and Kyle's skateboard buddies.
Yeah.
And it actually, I found it pretty interesting because my recollection of Police Academy 4, and I've got a pretty clear recollection of it, because when it came out in 1986, I believe it was, 1987, sorry, my mistake, I've got really big memories of the skateboarding scene in it and being right into skateboarding at the time. And I remember it was the Bones Brigade. It was Steve Caballero, Tony Hawk, and I can't remember the rest of their names, but I remember being quite interested in this film simply because of their involvement, and I knew they were in it. So it was kind of one of those kind of reasonably kind of notorious films for me as a teenager.
Oh yeah, the Bones Brigade being in this film is an obvious grab at the younger audience, and that's the only reason they're there. They come into the film, they do some skateboarding stunts, and then they just disappear from the movie. It's pretty funny, actually. But yeah, Tony Hawk actually said that this was the only job he ever got fired from. Most of the stunt doubles were from, of course, the Bones Brigade, because of their manager. He was the former pro skater Stacy Peralta. Stacy Peralta, and they worked as a second, and he also worked as a second unit director. And as it turns out, that Hawk was replaced as a stunt double for David Spade because he was too tall, so he ended up getting fired. And he said, "Yeah, that's the only job he's ever been fired from."
Apparently, Stacy Peralta was actually a very clever filmmaker in his own right. Yes, he was a skateboarder and he was heavily involved, but he actually made a movie a couple of years ago that I actually haven't seen, but I've got a really big interest in. It was called Crips and Bloods, Made in America, and it's a first-person look at the notorious gangs and all the African Americans growing up in South Los Angeles and the devastating gang violence and whatnot. And apparently, it's an excellent documentary, like really
interesting,
top notch, like as good as it gets kind of filmmaking. There's a podcast that I listen to called Moulton on Movies, and Leonard Moulton talks about this documentary as being like a really excellent film. So if you're after something a bit unique and different, I try and seek that one out.
Yeah, it's a good call. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, he's a very good filmmaker. He was involved with Dogtown and the Z Boys, and he's been involved with like various kind of other things for a long time.
Nice one. Well, another trivia here. Like I said, Sharon Stone's in this movie?
I know.
What? But she says it's actually due to the collapse of her first marriage. It's the reason why she came on here. And she wanted to actually get out and have some fun. She was going through a difficult period. And she is quoted as saying, "Hanging out with a gang of comedians, it was the best therapy."
Wow.
I think she's coming up with any reason why she was in Police Academy 4.
I had no idea she was in this until I think we mentioned it a few films ago. Didn't I kind of do a bit of a spoiler alert, like in one of the early episodes? Like, doesn't Sharon Stone show up in one of them? And here she is, and like, we'll get it more into it in the main discussion. But truthfully, she's reasonably forgettable in this film.
It's true. It's very true.
Anyway, we'll kind of get to that. And this is a bit sad from my perspective. This is the last time we see Mahoney, Nagata, Copeland, Sweet Chuck, and Zed. Apparently, Tim Kazurinsky, actually, or Sweet Chuck, I should say, he does have a guest appearance on Police Academy, the series, which was made in 1997 as a janitor. So he does come back for a small guest appearance. But we kind of lose some of the better characters, truthfully. In this it's going to be interesting when we get to Police Academy 5 and see what that's kind of like. Should we just get into our main discussion?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, so Police Academy 4. It opens up with a song called Citizens on Patrol, and we got Jones and Mahoney like cruising the streets in their SWAT car.
Yep.
And there's this song, and it seems that like Michael Winslow must have like been a part of the recording of this song. I don't know.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, they're there and they're like doing a bit of a dance, and it's the Citizens on Patrol song. Citizens on Patrol.
Yeah.
Citizens on Patrol. And then Michael Winslow comes in.
Yeah.
And he starts doing this wow, 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 wow. It's so weird.
Yeah, I know.
Why would they be dancing to this?
Yeah, I don't know.
As well, you know, with it's like breaking the fourth wall thing. I don't know. I thought it was weird. But anyway.
Yeah.
They get into it because they arrive at the police academy. And immediately they're run off the road by one of Commandant Lassad's golf balls.
Yes.
Because he's called them to the academy to initiate his new program, COP, Citizens on Patrol.
Because in all of the decades history of the academy, the only people Lassard can call on is Mahoney and Winslow and the gang. These are the best. This is the best of the bunch, isn't it? The best.
Exactly. Yeah. Because they've shown up and he's called them all together. So we've got, of course, Mahoney. We've got Mahoney, Jones.
Yeah. And don't you have that scene where Lassard is talking to Mahoney, Hightower, Jones, Tackleberry, Zed, and Sweet Chuck, and isn't he like practicing his golf swing like in the office, and he keeps hitting like golf balls around the office, and they keep hitting like, doesn't it hit Zed in the mouth or something like that?
Yeah, that's right. Hooks and Callahan are there as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't forget Hooks and Callahan. But yeah, and he lays out this thing, Citizens on Patrol, and it's like neighborhood watch, but like you actually train the citizens to better prevent crime.
Yeah, it's basically like involving the citizens in your so like you have a better relationship with them, so they kind of get involved with law enforcement and whatnot.
Yeah, and then they end with this gag where Zed comes in late, and you think the golf ball's going to hit him in the head, but instead he eats it or something, or it goes into his mouth and he spits it out. It was a weird gag.
Which apparently they filmed in reverse, so just to kind of get that gag in there. But yeah, man, I thought that whole scene was a bit odd, and that like the whole crew were doing their best to like play it straight, but I'm not too sure if it really worked, truthfully.
Yeah, it was a bit bizarre. But then we pretty much get like straight into it. They put out the word. It's all about putting out the word, because actually Commandant Lassard can't be involved in COP because, as we know, George Gaines just does drop-ins for these films.
And all he does is take care of his goldfish.
Yeah, and he's going to go to London to talk to like other police commissioners about it. So that's why he's not around, and the gang has to initiate the COP program.
Because later on in the film you have this really weird sequence, and you totally forget that Lassard actually goes to London. And you have this sequence where it suddenly goes, meanwhile in London. I'm like, what's going on here? Why
are we in London? Yeah.
Why is Nagata and Lassard in London? Anyway.
So, yeah. But yeah, they get straight into it. They're getting out the word. And they are going to visit the various kooky characters who are going to come to the academy, because, you know, we can't do, you know, our group of police officers now training more recruits. We did that in the last film. So this time it's citizens are going to come into the academy and we're going to train them.
I know.
It's not the same story.
No. So we have the skateboarding delinquents who we meet very early in the film with the Bones Brigade and whatnot, which is Kyle and Arnie. Kyle is played by the one and only David Spade, as and Arnie's guy named Brian Backer, who did look very familiar to me, but I wasn't really too sure where I had seen him before.
He is in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh, okay.
That's the only other place I know I've seen him. I may have seen him in something else, but yeah, that's where I've seen him before.
Yeah, well, since Police Academy 4 in '87, he's only appeared in a few things, so I'm not really too sure what he's been up to. But anyway, it's okay. It's okay.
But David Spade, right?
Yeah.
Is it just me, or does he sound exactly the same as he does today? He's the exact same. He's all of what, like 17 in this movie?
Because he looks really young. But you know what, man? The man doesn't age. He was born in 1964, and this was made in 1986. So he was 22 at the time.
Right. Okay. But still, he sounds exactly the same. We're talking 30 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
And he has the exact same voice. It's crazy.
And exactly the same acting style. I mean, I'm not a hater. Like, he's okay. He's
oh yeah, don't get me wrong. He's funny. He shows up in Adam Sandler movies here and there. He did Just Shoot Me. That was a great show.
To be fair, he's pretty consistent. I don't think he's ever really presented himself as the world's best actor. You know, like that does like really kind of meaningful, dramatic turns, and then does a really funny comedy film. In fact, I couldn't even tell you if David Spade has made a drama or a thriller. They're all goofball comedies, aren't they?
Hey, Arnie, where you going?
Home. Look, Kyle, I got a boatload of stuff to do. I got a term paper due tomorrow and a history test. I got to help my father clean the cellar, and I have to do the dishes tonight. What are you doing?
I'm going to get the guys and hang out at the mall.
Let's go.
Hey, Arnie, Kyle. Thought I told you guys no skateboarding in my district. This isn't skateboarding, Sergeant. This is carrying skateboards. This is skateboarding.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're set up, you know, they are skateboarders, naturally. This is where Tony Hawk and all them show up. And that's what I mean. It's so weird is that they go out skateboarding and then all these guys show up and they're all skateboarding together and they were warned not to by Copeland, of all people.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
And then they get to the mall where they were going, and all the other skateboarders just disappear, and they're like, "See you later, guys. Never to be seen again."
Never to be seen again, and you never see them again for the rest of the film, and they kind of come across as if they're all mates, yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know, whatever. But you know, then Kyle and Arnie end up getting, you know, chased by Harris. Harris is back. Yay.
And isn't there like a scene where Kyle and Arnie go to court and doesn't the judge kind of like throw the book at them a little bit and sort of say, yeah.
Conform to society.
Yeah, that's
yeah. But Mahoney steps in and says, "Hey, you know, we're initiating the Citizens on Patrol program. How about throw them in there as a form of alternative sentencing?" Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and it also sets up Harris. Of course, Harris is completely against the COP program. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He doesn't want any of them around his precinct because he's got his own precinct now. And Proctor's his offsider. So Proctor's jumped ship from Mauser to Harris.
I never really quite worked out why Harris would give up his Plum precinct job, which he looked like he had it pretty cushy with Proctor as the ridiculous sidekick. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, Corey. He's probably my least favorite character in the whole series. I don't really find him very funny. I never found him in any of his scenes. I've never really found him very funny. What do you think?
Yeah, no, he's all right. But you're right. He doesn't really add anything, I think, really. He does a bit in this movie, which I found a bit humorous here or there, but that's about it.
He's so silly. He's so silly. But yeah, Harris gives up his gig, and doesn't he get into the ear of the like Lassard's boss, and sort of tells him like all of the problems that are kind of going to come from the COP program, and that kind of leads Harris to kind of getting his old job back, looking over Lassard's academy. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the commissioner is the worst, right?
Yeah.
In the second one, we were talking about like how weird it was that the commissioner told Mauser that, like, you know, Captain Lassard could screw up, and if he does, then you get his job as captain. And we're like, well, what did you expect Mauser to do?
Yeah.
Here, Harris actually, like, the commissioner comes to see Harris, and Harris is like, this is a dumb idea. Why are we doing this? Cops will lose their jobs if we start training civilians in cops work.
Yeah.
And the commissioner's just like, the governor likes it, so we like it. And then the commissioner puts Harris in charge while Lassard's away in London. And you're like, what? Why?
Yeah, I know.
He obviously said he didn't like the program. You are the worst, Commissioner Hurst.
I know. So exactly right. so Harris gets reinstated back to Lassard's academy, and he shows up, and they all kind of realize that it's all going to go terribly pear-shaped as soon as kind of Harris shows up. And like, as much as we were kind of lamenting G.W. Bailey's departure from the series, and I wasn't entirely convinced by Art Matrano in episode 2 and 3. I'm not too sure Harris does a much better job in this one. He's almost like a caricature of the first character he played in the first film, if you know what I mean. Like, he's still good, but he's just not quite as funny. And to be fair, I don't think the material that he has to work with is quite as good as the first film.
Yeah, he's just doing that same film over again.
Yeah.
Just the gags, though, just the highlights. He's not doing any of that great stuff he did in the first one, really.
Yes.
Just playing his greatest hits, as it were.
Exactly. So we've got Kyle and Arnie, who is David Spade and Brian Becker. We've also got Tommy House Conklin, who's played by Tab Thacker, who's a pretty major part in this film. When I say major, like, he's certainly there or thereabouts, isn't he? But the other character that is really prominent is Tackleberry's new partner, who is this older woman, played by the great actress Billy Bird, who she has been in a lot of films. She plays Lois Feldman, doesn't she?
Yeah, Mrs. Feldman. She is great.
She's pretty good, isn't she?
I loved her introduction. We see her briefly in the town hall meeting that they're having. When Kyle and Arnie sort of bust in and get arrested. But yeah, Tackleberry and Callahan go to see her at a retirement home, and she's like decked her whole little apartment out in like army style, and Tackleberry loves it, and she's totally on board for being trained as a cop and getting out there. This little old woman is so funny. Another gag, I didn't even realize it until watching it this time. It is the most random little thing, but Tackleberry and Callahan show up in a cop car, right? They drive there, and they get out of the car, and for some reason Tackleberry is carrying his helmet, because we know he does bike patrol, right? And I'm like, why is he carrying that helmet if they drove there? They got out of the car and he was carrying it. Oh, wow. And it's like, it was almost as if to say, like, it's part of his persona. Like, he he walks around with his police helmet off under his arm like that, like, so when he presents himself, it's his thing or something.
I've never really noticed that, but you're right.
It's so weird, but I can't imagine they didn't do it intentionally. They just kind of threw it in there, and like I said, I've seen this movie so many times, only noticed it this first time, and I'm like, that's so random.
But once again, we kind of come back to the Tackleberry and this new character, Lois Feldman, and you're right, like, he shows up at her apartment and is totally decked out in kind of like guerrilla warfare, and there are guns everywhere, and it's camouflage everywhere, and you're right, Tackleberry's eyes pop out of his head, don't they? He just loves it. He thinks it's the best thing ever. It's like, nice digs, Mrs. Feldman.
Excuse me, sir. We're looking for a Mrs. Feldman. Do you know her?
Yes.
Excuse me, ma'am. Do you know a Mrs. Lois?
Where can we find Lois Feldman, please? Thank you.
Mrs. Feldman?
Who's asking?
Police.
Is it about those damn library books?
We're following up on your alleged interest in the Citizens on Patrol program.
Oh, then I'm Mrs. Feldman. Come on in.
Callahan, cover your rear. I admire your taste, Mrs. Feldman.
Yes, well, I do all my own decorating.
You have a talent for it, ma'am.
I'll be with you in a moment, Sarge.
Perhaps you'd like to discuss the program first, ma'am.
What's to discuss? Think I want to hang out here and listen to arteries hardening? Now, where'd I put that bulletproof vest?
Yeah, so we're pretty much drawing this group together. And they, Harris starts to tell them about, how he doesn't think this is going to work and all that, of course. I love he's reading a pre-prepared speech that Lassard made.
Yeah.
And he's reading it like, you will be trained in many, many, many fine police arts and have many, many, many great experiences. And he's just looking at it like, eventually just tears it up and throws it away.
They actually carry on with that gag a little bit towards, like, I think there's a halfway through the film, there's a sign that says, welcome to Captain Lassard's Police Academy, and where there are many, 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 many great such and such.
Yeah,
and
have a very, very, very nice day.
That's exactly right. It's very funny. It's quite good.
Yeah. So of course Harris isn't in on it, but all the trainers are going to do their best to make sure it works. So Mahoney comes in and he does his usual, this is Lassard's Academy, Harris, and you'll never. Mahoney really does like nothing in this movie.
He you know what though? I don't think he's quite as offensive as a character as he has been in previous films. Like in this film, he's not like just totally chasing any girl he can kind of get. Like he's a bit creepy in the previous films. This one, you're right, he's just nothing. He doesn't really do anything apart from be Mahoney and Steve Guttenberg and take the paycheck. I don't think he does a bad job in this film. But
No.
Yeah.
But he just does nothing. And then Sharon Stone is there as a reporter.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is she there? She's there to play off Mahoney, but Mahoney's not doing anything. So what in the hell's Sharon Stone doing? They actually had a scene that developed the two of them further. Like they go out on like sort of a date and she invites him back to her place. They cut the whole thing. And I'm like, I'm not surprised because Mahoney is so boring and nobody cares.
Did you see this is what you watched today and the special features? Because I actually didn't see the deleted scenes. I should have watched them. I was going to, but it didn't get there.
Yeah, I didn't even watch the whole thing of that.
Wow.
Like I found that it was the deleted scene, and then they started in, and she's inviting him into her house, and I'm like, I just don't care. I'm going to turn this off. This is. I understand it's on the special features, and thank you for letting me know that the scene was a part of the movie, but fuck it, I'm turning it off.
That's right. So. As we kind of said before, Harris, along with his right-hand man Proctor, are put in charge of the academy, and Harris immediately plots to make the COP volunteers quit and leave the police work to the officers. He actually says something early in the film where he says the concept of citizens doing police work is asinine, and he's absolutely determined to see the COP program fail and take over Lassard's job at the academy. It's always his ultimate kind of goal, isn't it, is to get rid of Lassard and kind of take over the facility. I mean, can you imagine a Captain Harris, Commandant Harris kind of thing? It'd be kind of funny, to be honest with you.
It would, because he's always like, he just really doesn't want anybody to have any fun all the time.
I know.
And it gets him in the most ridiculous circumstances. It even kicks off at the beginning where he's like talking down Mahoney and he just walks into the showers and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
It's a random thing to happen, but whatever.
But for someone who's so driven by success and kind of wants to kind of get to the top, why does he keep Proctor around? I just don't get it, because the man's he's a fool, but I suppose he kind of does his bidding, doesn't he? Like if Harris needs something to be done, Proctor will just do it straight away.
A party? Why wasn't I told?
Howdy.
Hey, Callahan. Hey, Hooks. Attention, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I'd like to thank you all for coming. Hey, let's party.
Move those patooties. Excuse me. All police officers out of the pool. Proctor. Let's go. Out, everybody out.
Sir, why don't you just let everyone enjoy themselves?
Why don't you just kiss my rosy red ass, Mahoney?
Rosie.
Get out of that pool now! Just look at yourself. You are a disgrace to the uniform. Go get changed. Move it, move it, move it.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, Proctor's just so dim-witted. But
don't we even see Copeland and that like early in the film? But they don't show up again, do they? They're in there just for a minute or two, don't we?
Yeah, pretty much. It was just the chase with
it's right at the start.
Kyle and Arnie.
So once again, they Police Academy has kind of decided to shift out some of the main characters that we kind of know a little bit and actually continually introduce new characters that we don't really know all that well. So
at the same time, Zed's back.
Zed is back, and as usual, he's hilarious.
He really is, because he's the one who really kind of butts heads with Harris. You know, as much as Mahoney butts heads with Harris, in this one they kind of focus on Zed sort of copying it from Harris, and it's actually pretty funny. But there's this whole thing where they send Zed out. Trying to get support for the CFP program. Right. He ends up at this women's poetry reading.
That's it. Yeah.
And the woman there, she ends up becoming his love interest because she volunteers.
She looked really familiar to me. She was a character. She was an actress named Corinne Bora. And she looked really, really familiar. And I tried to work out where she was kind of from, and I couldn't quite work out where. But I must have seen her on TV or something like that.
Yeah, she's got a very 80s look to her, though. So.
Oh, very much so. But she looked really, really familiar to me. I'm sure I've seen her in a few things, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I thought that was a great scene with Zed at the poetry reading, and then
I thought she was kind of good actually. I thought that whole kind of love interest thing, like as much as it was kind of ridiculous, it was kind of nice to see something more interesting happen to Zed.
Yeah, and she was a bit of a cliche, like a hot librarian or something that. Yeah. And she's taking photos all the time for some reason. I don't know. But yeah, she was all right. And it was good to have like a bit of a progression for Zed, who, like we mentioned, Bobcat was brought on like really late to this film. So they wrote this whole arc for his character in this at very late notice.
Is Hightower and Jones in this film just for like window dressing? Because they give Hightower nothing to do. The last couple of films they've given him nothing to do.
Yeah, pretty much. We get to a scene where
I'm assuming
Kyle and Arnie and House all think that they are like total badasses now.
Oh yeah,
and then they can go out.
Yeah,
so they set up this whole thing.
Don't they say like, we're ready, man? When are we going to go out? We're ready for this, man. We've been training for ages.
We should be vigilantes.
Yeah, that's right. And doesn't Jones and Mahoney and Hightower all collude to kind of create like a bit of a ruse, but the kids don't necessarily know what's going on, and they get them up in the middle of the night and go, right, you're ready, we've got to go out to like a job, and they put them in the back of a paddy wagon, and they show up at this like fight scene, or I don't know, it's like a crime scene, I should say, in the middle of the night, and Mahoney and Jones will take these kids along and go, right, if you come across the perp, then just stop him and get him to do whatever, and they goes, yeah, but what about the guns, man? Don't we need guns? And he goes, you shouldn't need them, they shouldn't have guns. And then Mahoney looks at Jones really smirkly and looks back to the camera and kind of goes, okay.
Yeah, but they set up a gunfight, and then bring out Hightower disguised as this dude they call Badula and his dead brother that they've just killed.
I know.
Throw the kids with Hightower and the dead body in the back, and then Hightower does this whole bit where he's doing voodoo magic.
I know.
And the body comes to life, And
it's Tackleberry.
Tackleberry with a chainsaw. And the kids just run away.
Oh my God.
It was actually a good bit, but you're right. That's pretty much all they get for Hightower in this movie.
It's a shame though, because I think it's something that this series really lacks a little bit. As much as I like the gags, man, and trust me, I do. Like, I'm not a hater on these films at all. Like, but you don't get to know any of the characters. Like, and it'd be nice to kind of learn a little bit more about Hightower or Jones or Hooks. I've said this before, man, in previous episodes, but they really ignore the character development, and it's just all about the gags all the time.
Yeah, but at least we're sort of getting a bit of development for Zed, which, like I said, is very unusual considering that Bobcat was brought on so late. And he's the one who's butting heads with Harris. So, after Harris has this whole bit, after he's Zed's sort of getting romantically involved with this woman, Laura.
Yeah.
And he has a whole great bit about his Mickey Mouse watch that stopped working. He says it's like a family heirloom. It was the last thing I stole before becoming a cop.
That's right.
And Harris kind of comes in, with his loudspeaker as he does. So
move it.
So Zed swaps out his deodorant with Mace.
I know.
And Harris comes into this class that Zed's teaching. It's the proper way to eat a donut. And he's got his arms propped up in these casts. It's so funny.
And doesn't he say something like, "The next person to misplace their can of mace is going to go and report and find," or something like that? And he's got his arms elevated and he can't put them down.
Yeah, he struggles to get back out the door. He has to go sideways and do this weird walk.
And of course, Lieutenant Proctor, or whatever his name is in tow as well, which is quite funny.
Mm-hmm. And they also get them on the Blue Oyster Bar this time. We get the gag again.
Speaking of, the fact that we don't see Copeland or Mahoney or Zed or I don't think, or Sweet Chuck again, this is the last time we'll see the Blue Oyster Bar. I'm sorry to disappoint you, everyone out there. And from what I understand, a bit of spoiler alert for Police Academy 5, but it was the last time we go there. And you know what?
It's run its course, really.
The people that they send in too is Proctor and Harris. And I'm sure Proctor went there in the last film.
Yeah, so why doesn't he know?
Because I can't even remember how they end up there. Don't they go out in the middle of the night and they're trying to find someone, and Harris goes, "Oh, I really hope this is the address," and Proctor says, "Yeah, this is meant to be the fine kind of eating establishment."
Yeah, like the best salad bar in town or something. So Mahoney tells me. And I was like, yeah, okay, it's still kind of funny, but you're right. It's run its course. It was almost as if it was a secondary thought where they were like, "Oh, we didn't do the Blue Oyster gag. Well, let's just have Proctor and Harris show up there."
Yeah.
After Mahoney told them that it was a great salad bar, and we'll just play the scene out and put it in the movie. It's run its course.
Yeah. So, despite the pranks played upon Harris during the various training exercises the volunteers take, Harris is still determined to make the COP program fail. And let me look. We're calling it Citizens on Patrol, but there's a big gag throughout the whole thing where they're always calling it COP, aren't they? So, aren't they all wearing T-shirts with COP on there, and George Gaines is on there pointing his finger at you, saying "We want you," kind of thing, And for some reason, they're convinced, or George Gaines or Commandant Lassard is determined that it's going to be like this really popular thing all throughout the world, isn't he?
Exactly, yeah, because we do cut to that scene of Lassard in London, and there's all these representatives from other law enforcement from around the world. And they do this gag of he's been teaching them English, so they all speak like he does. And they've all got goldfish. And for some reason, Nagata's there.
Why is Nagata there?
But the thing is that Lassard comes back to the academy, and Nagata comes with him, and he sort of gets his moment with Callahan as well.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, you're
And,
right. It's the only time they get back together as well, because they got back together. Well, they started seeing each other in the third one, which is always a bit of a strange pairing. And in usual Callahan style, they have a very angry kind of love scene a little bit, don't they?
Yeah, she repeats the line again.
But
isn't
it a gag though when the Garda jumps onto Callahan and says, "Oh, I've missed you so much," and then doesn't Callahan jump up? And aren't they in some class or something like that? Or
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and immediately the COP program fails because Mrs. Feldman
is
pulls
behind
everybody in. She thinks there's all these people selling stolen goods and all these, they come in, they bust in, and it ends up being an undercover sting. 3 months of police work out the window. So COP program is shut down.
It's shut down, and Harris has a big go at them the next day and says that they're in big trouble. All this kind of work has kind of got out the window, and it's your fault, and you should never have been out there in the first place. And this is a disaster, and there's going to be an inquest and a report into this and all that kind of stuff, isn't there?
Exactly. So, all these delegates are back in the US, and they're sort of getting a tour around the station. And of course, Harris comes in with his big grin and says, "Oh, well, unfortunately, we've had to shut the program down, in front of all these world delegates and stuff."
And this is, I was talking about how much I dislike Proctor. Well, I really dislike Proctor in this film, because as the delegates are getting touring around the station, he walks into the jail, doesn't he? And all the inmates are playing this game.
Simon says.
I know. And they somehow kind of coerce Proctor into getting involved in the game itself and disarm him of his gun straight away, and then force him to kind of switch places with all of the inmates. And then out of nowhere, without any real warning, there's a jailbreak, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. We did skip over it too, but they did. He was sort of having a go at everybody. He says they were goofing off, playing basketball, but it was citizen relations really. And he's like, "I'm going to go and tell on you." And he's in a Portaloo.
Doesn't he say, "I know what goofing off is because I'm the king of goofing off," or something like that? I know all about slacking off.
So he goes into a Portaloo, and they have a crane.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Put it into a stadium full of football fans during a game, and he has to stand up for the anthem. And you're like, seriously? It's not that funny. It was all right, I guess. But yeah.
I know,
not that funny. Not that funny.
Somehow Mahoney kind of convinced all the people involved to kind of do this as well.
Yeah.
And isn't he sitting inside the toilet reading an Archie comic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's he gets a bit of the rattle from, being lifted up by a crane, and he just thinks it's somebody else trying to come in, and you're like, what? Can police officers actually force crane operators to get involved in this? And they latch it on the top.
Mm.
On just a flimsy bit of plastic, it's got this loop on the top, and I'm like, what's to stop that from breaking and killing the guy? It actually seems like a pretty dangerous prank to be pulling on somebody right now.
And they put him into the middle of a football game, and I actually, on the special features, there was a bit of a behind the scenes thing on it, and the guy who played Lieutenant Proctor, I should say, I can't remember what his actual actor's name is, Lance Kinsey, that's his name. Apparently it was before an actual football game. It was before one of the Rose Bowls in 1986 or something like that, and it was just before the game started, and they filmed the scene in front of everyone, and they had 7 or 8 cameras on him just because they had one shot to get this scene, and they did it, and he was nervous as hell, and he looked like a fool, but he did it, and he got the shot, and that was kind of that.
There is one shot which I think is glaring, and when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, how did you not see that?" And I'm not sure I've seen it before, but it's an actual shot of as the toilet comes down, the crane is dropping it onto the football field, and Jones comes up and he takes all the pins out of the side so they can lift it off.
Yeah.
There is a tree right behind him.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay, so they obviously shot that in a park or something like that where there was grass.
Yeah.
Either that or there's a tree right in the middle of this football field.
Oh my lord.
So yeah, go back and watch that again.
Yeah, well, I'll check it out.
You'll get that one shot of Jones where there's this tree right there, and you're just like, "Ooh, yeah, got that in a shot."
I actually even noticed earlier on in the film when I think they do a gag with Sweet Chuck when he's sitting on the end of like a bench in like some kind of gymnasium, and you know he's actually a character that we haven't talked about too much in this film, and like Zed is hilarious, but you know what, Sweet Chuck is just as funny. I think he plays it so spot on, like he's so not confident with a gun, and he so clearly shouldn't be a police officer, but he plays it for laughs, and it's pretty funny. And there's a scene where he's sitting on the end of a bench in a gymnasium, and the new character, I think they call him House, because he's kind of like walking in and he's kind of singing along to the song, whatever it is, and he doesn't realize what's happening, and he sits at the end of the bench and he shoots Proctor up in the air, but as he sits down on the bench you can clearly see Proctor being like shot up in the air by some kind of device under his seat, and it's not a very good special effect.
Yeah, they do it again when Sweet Chuck's up on the roof, and Zed he gets hit in the head with a shoe or something, and then he swings him around and he lands in the basketball hoop there as well, and you're like, okay.
Is it fair to say too that Jones's shtick with his sound effects is getting a bit old by the fourth film as well?
Yeah, I don't know. It was. They set it up too, because they're like, oh, we're gonna do this training thing, and then no cassette. So he starts doing the thing. You're like, okay, this sounds nothing like a song. I understand, like he's really good at doing his sound effects and stuff, but that sounds nothing like any kind of song I've ever heard ever. and Callahan's just like, wow, great song, yeah. Slow jog.
I know, and then I think because they're desperate to try and find something for everyone to do in this film, and I think they struggle with it a little bit. They should have, truthfully, man, they should have reduced the characters down in this film a little bit, focused on the ones that we knew, give them all a little bit more to actually do, and actually get to know them a little bit more. And I do think this film would have been considerably better.
Yeah. We do there was a good gag with Mrs. Feldman, actually, where Sweet Chuck's trying to teach them, like, what to do with a whistle in the case of being robbed.
Oh, yes.
And Mrs. Feldman, like, just beats the shit out of him.
Totally beats him up, doesn't
while
he?
he's trying to be Mr. Purse Snatcher.
And doesn't, like, Zed and Jones have to come over and, like, pull her off him?
Yeah. That was pretty good.
There's also another gag, too, when they're at some shooting range and Tackleberry, like, all the other, COPs have really small guns, and they, and Feldman desperately... Doesn't she call him Tack? Doesn't she say, "Hey, Tack,
let me squeeze off a round with your giant gun"?
Tack, and then Tackleberry, without any hesitation, says, "No problem," and gives him his ginormous gun. And you can see the gag a million miles before it actually happens. But the kickback on the gun as she fires it is huge, and doesn't she like fly into the back wall and cause a big disaster? Yeah.
There's also like a quick shot of the target too that she's shooting at. It shoots it like right in the dick. Yeah, it's so random. But yeah. So
anyway, when Lasard's officers hear of the jailbreak, all of the cop volunteers are dispatched along with the regular officers to catch the escaped felons. And after stopping a robbery and a high-speed air balloon chase,
man, like I gave it to them last week. They're on the ski-doos and all that. I was like, it's kind of interesting. I've never seen anything like this before. A high-speed hot air balloon chase? Are you kidding me?
I know.
And then they're going up in like old 40s, 50s planes and
you
stuff.
know what, man? All of that stuff would have cost a lot of money as well. Like, it would have been expensive to film, and it would have been expensive to, like, shoot and make, and, oh, man, they would have spent a lot of money on that sequence, and you know what? It doesn't really come together.
No. Mahoney goes up there with Sharon Stone, who's just like, yeah, I can fly a
Yeah,
plane,
I know, which is so random because they show up to the crime scene and Mahoney's like, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's like Stone is like, no problem, man, I can take care of this. And next thing you know, they're in this little plane, and it's like, what on earth is happening here? Like, are we in the Twilight Zone at the moment? Is that what's happening? Because that's what it feels like.
The weird thing is, right, because they've got these people doing stunts, walking out on the wings and all that stuff, right? And they don't even try to hide that these people are stunt doubles with parachutes on their back. Because it's like, they crawl out of the plane. They got no parachute on or anything, and then it's a stunt double with a parachute on their back. And I'm like, okay, so not even going to try to hide that they've suddenly got a parachute on.
Yeah, I know.
And they did it over and over again with Mahoney, and then Sweet Chuck and Zed are up there as well. And it was just so obvious that they were swapping them out with these stunt doubles. It kind of annoyed me, really. And then Tackleberry, they did the whole stunt where he sort of jumps on the balloon and then parallels down the side.
And then doesn't he say when he gets down there, "Can I please see your license and registration?" or something like that?
That was probably the best part of it, to tell you the truth, was the Tackleberry part. But the rest of it, I was just like, ugh, this is dumb and not funny. And of course, Harris and Proctor end up in the river. So
after Proctor fires off a warning shot and shoots a hole in the balloon.
Yeah, so Arnie, Kyle, and Hal show up to rescue them. It's closing the chapter on that, and he's like, yeah, whatever. It was so just it was a crappy ending.
Do we see Captain Harris again?
Yes.
We do.
He's still going to come back for I think the rest of the sequels, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing him there. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
So,
and then, of course, Mahoney flies off in a hot air balloon too. A Police Academy hot air balloon. Where the fuck you got that from?
These films have this weird way of wrapping them up. They literally just stop. The movies finish and they just stop. There's no kind of you don't have 5 minutes catching up with the characters at the end of the film. The chase ends, or they'll have a speech or something like that, and then the film just roll to credits, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I didn't like this ending at all.
No.
The movie had some great stuff. I really liked Mrs. Feldman. I liked all the stuff with Zed. Him and
Sweet
his
Chuck.
love interest, and Sweet Chuck was in there. I thought that was great.
I could have done without Lieutenant Hooks. She did
nothing. Oh man, I forgot about it. I can't believe I forgot about it. But Proctor sets up that in the jail that they had arrested a gang of ninjas.
Oh, that's right.
And then
ninjas. And
Nagata,
Jones and
Callahan and
Nagata.
Jones end up fighting the ninjas on a ship. I actually really, really like that. I thought that was funny because they're driving up to the ship there, and Callahan just goes, "Look, there's a ninja now."
and if you look closely at the guy who's playing Nagata, it's clearly a stunt double with a really bad wig on, and it's just not done very well. But that's okay. It's the 80s. I can accept it.
Yeah, I loved the scene. I thought it was great. So.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Oh. I don't know. I think I still like number 1 the best. Number 3 was really, really funny. We had a good time with that. This one's not as bad as number 2 was. I think we both agreed that 2 was kind of a low point, but not as good as number 3. So
no, I'm kind of looking forward to number 5 though. Not that I'm to have high hopes for it, but I'm just kind of I'm hoping to kind of get to know a little bit more about some of the other characters that I don't really spend much time with, and especially with all these, Zed and Sweet Chuck and Mahoney kind of going, away from the series now. I'm hoping we get to spend a little bit more time with Hightower and Hooks and Jones and Harris and Proctor, and actually maybe get to learn a little bit about them possibly. But I'm not expecting great things. I'm still expecting gag a minute. But that's okay. They're fun films to watch, and even though we're kind of complaining, I didn't have too bad a time watching this film.
Okay, so rating, recommend.
Yeah, I'm kind of middle of the road for this. I'm going to give this 5 Mrs. Feldmans out of 10. It's kind of where it's at. It's not essential viewing. It's not a great film. There's a couple of gags in there, but it's fun. As I said, I didn't hate watching it, so it's all right.
Yeah, and I'm probably there with you. It's fine. You can check this one out. It's not the best one. I'll probably give it 6 Mickey Mouse watches. 6
Mickey Mouse watches. I like it.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the funniest scenes of the whole film when he's going, but I've got sentimental value over this. The immeasurable sentimental value of the inexplicable reason as to why Zed became a police officer, because it's never really explained. He just shows up at the start.
He was just reformed for whatever reason.
Shows up at the start of Police Academy 3, because at the end of Police Academy 2, Is it 2, isn't he? He's in
Yeah,
that one.
he was the gang leader and he was going to jail.
That's exactly, he was going to jail, and like he was a really bad dude. He wasn't just the gang leader, he was like the gang leader. He was like the gang leader that hid like in the underground, guarded by like 50 kind of security guards. It was hilarious. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So, just a reminder as always that we'd love to hear from you guys. So if you want to send us your feedback, any thoughts on the films we're talking about, we've got them for our feedback section, which we're calling Citizens on Patrol, funnily enough. So feel free to reach out. We'll be giving our info at the end of the show. But first, how about another game of Who Said This?
Who Said This?
So give me a count in.
You ready? 3, 2, 1, scene.
Gene made a machine and Jojo made it go. Art blew a fart and blew the whole damn thing apart.
Even I can't remember who said that, and you didn't give it to me. I might have to get back to you next week about that, if that's all right.
Well, it's a poem, so
okay.
In what scene were they saying poetry?
Yes. No,
yes.
I do remember that scene. Well, there you go. All right.
I didn't write it.
No.
That's how he ends after the poem.
Nice. It's very funny.
Yeah. So if you think you know who said that in this movie, just hit us up on our social media feedback. Use the hashtag Rewatch Quote, and get involved.
Get involved. It's good fun. So next week's episode is going to be Police Academy 5, Assignment Miami Beach. And I actually don't recall seeing that. I think back in the day I probably stopped at the 4th film. I don't remember seeing the last 3 films.
Well, not to give too much away, but I kind of really like Assignment Miami Beach. I think it's one of the better installments. So
nice.
Get into that next week.
All right. Yeah, should be good. So that's it for this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by joining our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast, or follow the show on Twitter at RewatchPod, and visit our webpage rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com.
And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message and send it to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. It's always very helpful. And, of course, you can help support all the great work we do here at the Rewatch Podcast by heading over to patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast, where you can make a monthly contribution as little as $1. And, of course, it would just help us keep the lights on around here. So very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, any contribution is really greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for joining me again, Nathan.
Thank you. Hey, yeah, no, it's good fun, and I'm looking forward to next week. There is, as I said, man, we have spirited discussions about these films. Some are varying quality, but I think overall they're fun, and they're certainly worth a watch.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'll just say until next time. People don't know who I really am. Now I have to worry about my diction too.
No, you don't understand, man. It's like a sentimental thing. It was the last thing I stole before joining the academy. And I know we repeated that earlier in the line, but I think it's a good enough line to end with.
It's a good line.
See you next week.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with the copyright holders of these films, and no copyright infringement is intended. The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in Title 17, aka Fair Use. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Copyright 2016, The Rewatch Podcast.